Hey everyone, if you like this video and you want to see more, hit right down below, like and subscribe. And if you want even more Scareworks, visit our Patreon page at patreon.com/Scareworks. If you're local to Long Island, New York, and need movie recommendations, subscribe to the Long Islander newspaper where you can catch my movie reviews and theater write-ups every week. We cover everything from local businesses, food and drinks, town events, and sports. Subscribe at longislandernews.com for only $35 a year. All right, we have another very exciting guest today. He is a writer, actor, director, producer, and author known for Best Friends Volume 1 and 2, Miracle Valley, The Disaster Artist, and his upcoming project Forbidden Sky. But of course, many of you know him as Mark from The Room. We've got Greg Sestero here today. Greg, thank you so much for coming on.
Hey, my pleasure. Thanks for having me, man.
First, just how are you? You've been touring around the country right now with The Room, and I imagine you're all over the place. So, like, how you been?
It's been great. I always enjoy meeting people that have discovered your work, appreciate your work. Uh, we all love movies, so it's great to get on there and chat with people about movies they've seen recently. So it's just a chance to hang out with a really cool group of people. And in between that, I'm writing. I'm developing Forbidden Sky, the new Alien movie, and I'm also working on a project I'm really, really excited about, which is I'm adapting a script I wrote when I was 12. It was a sequel to Home Alone set in Disney World.
My
And so
gosh.
I'm working on that, bringing that to life as well. So
It's so funny. You actually talk about that in your book, The Disaster Artist. You had written this inspired sequel to Home Alone, and then you actually sent it out. Can you describe what happened when you sent the screenplay out? I mean, you were like 12 when you wrote it, right?
yeah, it was a different time then. You had to like look, call 411, look up things in the phone book. I had to track down 20th Century Fox, somehow get John Hughes' production company address, which was in Lake Forest, Illinois. Wrote a cover letter, and at that time it was crazy because I said, if we can get the Home Alone sequel and have Disney on board to promote it and market it, because it's set in Disney World, it'd be a really valuable tool. That was in my cover letter, and here we are all these years later, and Disney owns Home Alone. So, and they made a sequel on Disney Plus. So, I think I was seeing the future, but it was really cool. I sent it out to John Hughes. I really believed the whole thing was going to happen. I had picked out a premiere date. It was when it was going to happen. I drew the cover and everything, and so I got a letter back from John Hughes talking about how impressed he was with the effort. And so that's when I found the passion of wanting to tell stories and make movies, because I realized I was in school at the time. I was like just going into high school, and that expanded my world in a way where it made me realize how big stories and movies can be. And I just wanted more of that.
Do you still have that letter from him?
I do, and I still have the script as
Ah,
well.
that's so
So
cool. That's so freaking cool. Right around that time, you kind of mentioned the fact that you had like other career aspirations kind of rolling around in your head, and one of them was like you wanted to work for EA Sports. Like, what did you want to do for them?
oh yeah, so I loved another passion I was video games. My first job was working for Sega,
Huh.
and I would do video game testing, and I loved Madden, I loved NBA. And so I just had like I would have just loved to have been in like a creative room with and coming up with games, or how to improve sports games or basketball games. And um it was just something I always found myself, you know, playing with my brother. And I just, yeah, video games was a big passion. And I thought, hey, I play these sports games, and I'm like, man, if they just did it this way, I feel like the gameplay would be way more fun, or more crowd noise, or so I just wanted to do something creative with sports as well.
Do you still have any interest in going into gaming at all?
I've kept up with games. I started out playing ColecoVision, Atari, and it's just incredible what's happened. I mean, I love one of my favorite games is Limbo.
Sure.
Inside is another great one. Red Dead Redemption.
Red Dead, yeah.
Always love Grand Theft Auto. Dead Space.
Dead Space
Uh,
is another one of my faves.
yeah, games are just such a creative medium now where they tell stories through
Yeah,
games. And I really would love to see someday a Star Wars free roam game like GTA, where you
that would be,
start out in
yeah, that'd be very cool.
Tatooine and you have
Yeah,
your speeder, you go out and you do missions, you can go mess with things, get into fights with like Jawas, like same kind of deal.
that'd be
So I
fun.
really would love to see that. I feel like I'd love to see a Star Wars because one of my favorite games is on Super Nintendo was Super Star Wars. That series I feel like got close at that time of being like the perfect Star Wars game. So I still think I'd love to see the original trilogy in a great video game.
So mo moving back towards the room, I mean, for the uninitiated few who have not seen it or don't know about it yet, can you kind of describe briefly, I guess, what it is and what it's become?
It really is a movie that, we made it with such sincerity. I had met Tommy in an acting class, and I really have a thing for aspiring artists that don't get put into a box. They don't see they're not limited by what people tell them. So Tommy believed he was a leading man. He believed he was a Marlon Brando. And so we made this movie, and I was really there to help him and get it made. I didn't think anybody would ever see it. And it's really a movie that you cannot find anywhere else. It's not only a movie experience, if you see it with a crowd, it totally changes your view on cinema and what's possible. But it's a phenomenon that has traveled the world, been around for over 20 years now. Plays in almost every major city, almost monthly, and it just something brings me a lot of joy. I've seen parents bring their teenagers and be like, my son quotes this all the time. He genuinely loves it the way, I loved Back to the Future. So it's been baffling to me to see it grow. But it's very cool to be a part of something that brings people that much joy. And it's a movie, like I said, you can't see it at home. You've got to go to the theater and see it with a crowd.
So, I mean, when I was in high school, I think scenes from the room were kind of like some of the first like viral clips on YouTube. I think like a lot of those clips kind of circulated around like wildfire, especially when I was in school at that time. I mean, people were constantly talking about this movie that like you wouldn't believe it. But like truthfully, I never really saw the movie until like a year ago when you actually came to
Sure,
the art
sure.
center. And reading your book, The Disaster Artist, I kind of actually had this weird parallel to you watching Tommy in his acting class, in your acting class with him. You talk about how when you're sitting in the acting class, you were kind of stressed and down about where you were in your career at the time. And Tommy, for all of his um, grandeur and kind of ridiculous performance, kept you going to the class. It kept you going back there. It entertained you. It gave you some kind of um, fleeting aspirational hope with it. And it kept you kind of interested in where you were going on that career path. And last year we we had been through the writer's strike or just about coming up on the writer's strike at the time. I've been doing this for like almost 15 years, and it's just as hard a slug as everybody else has has had with it. And the movies that are hitting theaters lately are very monotonous. I have to review the movies for the paper every week, and I see every movie that hits the theater. And granted, there's plenty of good ones, but there's plenty of bad ones. And like when I saw The Room at the Cinema Arts Center, which will be back at September 18th, um, it really gave me a theater experience that I just hadn't had since like Rocky Horror the first time I saw it. It genuinely brought me so much joy and laughter. I don't know. I mean, I that's just my experience I had with it. I mean, it really like it reinvigorated me a lot when I saw it at the show that you premiered it with. And I encourage people to see it, when you hit their town because I mean outside of it just being a hilarious and enjoyable theater experience, you provide a lot of really funny commentary about what's going on there. Can you talk about like some of like the shenanigans that were going on set?
Yeah, it was really again, I had a great role because I was helping Tommy. I was a fan of Tommy and his work and his character. So I got to see all these people that had no idea who he was interact with him. And it was just so fascinating to watch someone have this vision and everyone be like, what? This doesn't add up. This doesn't make sense. Why are we doing it this way? He's like, because that's the way it's done. That's bottom line. So it was a really interesting character study. And all these years later, I'll see choices that were made that in the moment felt like, oh my God, we're gonna reshoot the Chris R scene for 3 weeks on a rooftop. Like, do people really care? And all these years later, I realized a lot of those were the right choices. I mean, there was an article that came out that talked about the VFX artists who did Batman and Avatar, I think, used the room green screen backdrop rooftop as like inspiration for Gotham.
That's hilarious.
So it's really it's really interesting to see all these years later, like all of a sudden you're seeing things that work that in the moment you didn't. So now when I approach anything creatively, I always have an open mind to whatever I'm doing.
I truly think it will stand the test of time. I mean, I think it's going to be shown in art house cinemas probably until I'm dead, or the industry. I mean, I don't know. One of the two is going to die first. Um, but so the like you talk about how like the most maybe infamous scene is when Tommy walks out, or Johnny rather walks out.
I did not hit her. It's not true. It's bullshit. I did not hit her. I did not. Oh, hi, Mark.
How long did it take to get that shot?
That the oh hi Mark scene is really the pivotal moment in the room. You can show that to a 7 year old and 80 year old, and they watch that and they have abject shock and then joy on their face, and they have questions, and it's what does what every scene in a movie should do to some capacity, but it really takes your breath away for better or for worse. And yeah, we did 36 takes on that because Tommy was coming out of the outhouse. He was trying to hit his mark. He was trying to say mark, and they're trying to get him to look up because I'm supposed to be sitting off camera. So Tommy's very engaging in a personal appearance, when he's on stage and he can move freely. But here he had to like specifically hit quote unquote marks, and he was just wasn't his day. So people were just like losing their minds. They thought it was like a skit, but it was deadly serious. And at the very end, I gave Tommy a water bottle because I was sitting off camera for so long. I drank like 2 or 3 bottles of water. And so I went up to him like, hey, you always love props. You always love, objects and passion. Take this, and you're upset, throw it or something. And he did that. And that take, we're like, we got it. It was like, hit his mark, said mark, oh, hi, Mark, threw the water bottle. It's just, we really worked hard on that scene. And I'm so glad we didn't just like think it was an insignificant moment.
No, definitely not. I mean, it's got to be one of the most infamous scenes I think of all time. In your book, The Disaster Artist, which is available, of course, anywhere you buy books, and the Audible book, which is hilarious, which is available on Audible. You talk about these moments where it's like so many crazy things are happening on set, and the crew is like trying to conceal their laughter. While you're on set in those scenes, I mean, how are you feeling? I mean, outside of just overwhelmed, how are you feeling, in that kind of moment? And also, like, I think in your defense too, you know, I've heard a lot of talk about, why would any of these people agree to this project? You got to work. I mean, you need to make money too. Um,
Yeah, actually some of the crew that was working on it, they were working on Terminator 3 as well. So those are the two movies filming nearby at that time. And we were filming at a really well-known camera equipment rental shop who we took over their parking lot.
yeah, Burns and
And
Sawyer, right?
so yeah, and so a lot of people like in town knew about that because that's where like Michael Jackson would go there to get cameras. So when they got hired, I think some of them were like, oh, this is something, hey, this is through Burns and Sawyer. And then they quickly realized this is a whole different experience.
Well, can you explain why Burns and Sawyer kind of allowed this to happen? Because it's a very interesting financial aspect to that.
Yeah, so Tommy, he's has a very unique set. Um, he buys everything. So he bought all of his own equipment.
Which for those outside of the industry is abnormal. You typically do not buy equipment, you rent it from a studio or a production house.
Yeah, because things are changing so frequently. So he bought all of the equipment, the Apple boxes, the stands, like a full studio set of equipment. Um, and so they were like, okay, this is a unique way of doing it, Tom. This guy is he's bold. So he just kept buying lenses. And so I think the more he went on, he's like, I want to film here. This is perfect. And so they were like, hey, this guy's on property. He's buying stuff every day. Let's keep him on property. And so they were supporting him to make this movie because it was so beneficial for them as well. Because they literally had somebody who wasn't renting equipment, he was buying all the equipment from them.
So I'm really curious, has Tommy read your book?
He yeah, so I was interviewing him when I was writing it, and he was like, I got the idea to write the book after attending a screening with him one night and thought, if people love this movie, they are going to be blown away by the story, by the
Yeah.
friendship, and so I was like, I think this book could make a good movie. And Tommy's like, yeah, I give you a story. So I interviewed him about all different parts of his life and making the room and stuff. So I give him the book, and I think he skimmed it and went through different parts, but he he's like, why you say that I dye my hair a magic marker ink on the first page? I'm like, oh, that was just a joke. It was like a funny description. And so that was the big note I got. But quickly after that, it was like 3 weeks after the book came out, James Franco reached out
Really?
and said
That quickly?
yeah, he said he's never seen The Room before. He's reading the book and he thought this story is the craziest Hollywood story I've ever heard.
Wow. That's incredible. So I mean, when James Franco reaches out to you, what is your feeling?
I was stunned. I mean, I knew because Tommy and I both love James Dean, and James had played James Dean.
Of course, yeah, you,
So I
you
was
even went
familiar.
to the memorial for him, right?
Yeah, so I was very familiar with all that, but um, it was a crazy goal that story gets turned into a movie. And obviously when he was with Seth Rogen and they reached out, I thought, man, it's great to think big and like the John Hughes thing. It's great to really have big dreams and they may not always happen the way you hoped, but
Believe
it
in
was a
yourself.
very yeah, it was a really
Yeah.
cool moment where I was like, wow, they read the book. That's the part I thought was so cool is they experienced the story. Because you work on a book for so long, you really want the reader to take that journey with you.
Oh yeah, of course, 100%. And I mean, it is definitely a journey. I mean, the book is a ride. There's actually, I saw the Disaster Artist movie before I read the book, and I have to say the book is really chock full of so much more than the movie could possibly show. It's wildly funny, and also, I mean, for any aspiring filmmaker, it is just an amazing story to read about because I think anybody, still in the independent field could relate to where you are in that book. You know, um, when they well, like when Franco reached out to you, was there any like ever a thought of you playing yourself in the movie, or did he w want to play Tommy and Dave play you?
Yeah, no, I had I pictured the story as a film. So I was thinking like Javier Bardem as Johnny. Then there's Ryan
That would have
Gosling as
worked.
Greg.
That would have worked.
Like, so those are the ideas I had. I saw it as a distance for myself as a separate film because I really wanted people who have never seen The Room to watch The Disaster Artist.
After watching The Disaster Artist, is it weird seeing Dave Franco play you? Or was that kind of the expected turn of events?
I mean, it's always surreal, and I was really cool to go to the set and see them recreating scenes from your experience. Very therapeutic, oddly. But it was surreal at times. But because I had that initial vision of becoming a film, it definitely was more in line with what I was thinking.
Do you still talk to any of the cast from the room?
We still keep in touch, like messages. I mean, some of the cast is like grown kids that are in college now. So like it's just a crazy. chunk of our lives that to look back on. Everyone I think is doing really well in their life, and they're really a cool group of people.
I'm very curious now, moving just kind of more to your stuff. You have Miracle Valley out on Tubi, right? It's on Tubi?
It's on Tubi and Amazon Prime now. Yeah,
Even
so
better. So like, can you talk about Miracle Valley for a bit? What
sure.
that movie is about and you know, what your goal was with it?
Yeah, I love horror movies. Coming up, it's a good time.
Sure.
Halloween, 70s horror films. And so I wrote and directed and starred in a movie called Miracle Valley, which is about a real life cult set in the Arizona desert. This cult traffics people based on their blood type, and it's a really strange, true-ish story. And went out and had a great time making it. We shot it on Ari and really went for practical effects
Good.
and really tried to make a film that's fun with the crowd. So we did a lot of screenings and festivals. Had a great time with it, and it's a short, crazy ride that I feel like when I make movies now, I want it to be like 90 minutes or less, give the audience a quick punch. So, but so yeah, and so that sort of led to Miracle Valley led to me now getting into like UFO stories.
Huh.
So because I was living in the Arizona desert during the pandemic,
Okay.
and um and so from there I took a UFO night tour about
Oh,
in
cool.
Sedona, which was a really strange experience, and so I documented that. And so Miracle Valley sort of led to Forbidden Skies, so that's what I'm working on next.
Very cool. So, can you, I mean, I know it's probably still in the early stages, but can you give us any like updates or hints on Forbidden Sky?
Yeah, so I'm doing more practical effects as well in that.
Excellent. Love to hear that.
Some of my favorite UFO movies are Fire in the Sky, Galaxy Quest.
Love Fire in the Sky.
And so the story sort of revolves around a radio host who used to be on a really bad sci-fi TV show that got canceled before they could do their season finale. And he really believed that this sci-fi alien show was predicting what was going to happen, this message to save humanity. And so anyway, it's truly just a really bad sci-fi show. But so his whole life has been to spread this message, and he's now a radio host and living out of a trailer. Family's abandoned him, his daughter's like that. I can't keep doing this. I'm moving away. Like his life's about to be over, and then all of a sudden, this alien race reaches out to Earth with a very special message. They only want to speak to him. So all of
Hmm.
a sudden now he's this important figure in this sort of like galactic war between this alien race and Earth. Like he is suddenly this important figure. So it's a really fun, crazy kind of. Another inspiration is the Truman Show as
Yeah,
well.
that's a very cool concept.
So yeah, there's just so many ideas and so many things we're working through, and yeah,
Do
I hope
we
to have it out.
do we have any timeline as to when we might see this?
Next year. Yeah,
Next
that's the
year?
goal. Yeah, going for
Well,
next
we're
year.
going to be looking forward to it. And you know, if you want to come back on the works and promote it, you know, we'll be here. We'll be waiting for you.
Always
Uh,
happy to.
Obviously, you're coming to Cinema Arts Center on September 18th to do another screening of The Room. To people that have never been to a live show, any recommendations for them?
It is, like I said, it was something, seeing the room in the theater is something that the first 15 minutes will change your view on cinema, may change your view on life. And for some reason, I don't know why, it's a great date movie. I've met people that this was their first date and they're now married, like a lot of great couples. So that
Hey,
says something. I don't know what, but
folks, you heard it here. This might be the way to meet your life partner. You know, I wanted to leave off on this. You know, in the introduction of your book, you kind of write that The Room has made you change your opinion on what is success in art. And you know, what is success and what is failure in art. Do you have any like kind of updated feelings on that thought processes?
definitely when it comes to film, a story, a movie is a vision of that thought, and it's not really meant to be better than this or worse than that. It's just that story. You have filmmakers like M. Night Shyamalan, or they're like, oh, that's not as good as The Sixth Sense, or it's not never as good. you know, I don't think filmmakers are trying to make that. The new movie he made, Trap, is just a moment of like he thought of with his daughter going to concert. What if this happened? What if that happened? And that's where great ideas come from, and they're going to affect people in different ways. So film, especially, is so subjective. It's like it's not meant to. Not every movie's meant to be groundbreaking. It's meant to be a moment. Like I heard the story about Vince Gilligan. He was doing the X-Files, and he was like, "Man, what if we never get another job again? We might have to sell meth." And they're like, "Oh, what would that look like?" And those little ideas led to one of the greatest shows ever. And I'm sure when they started with that idea, they weren't thinking of what Bad would become. So it's so important not to shoot down ideas or judge other creators. Or every idea deserves a moment. And more than ever now, I've tried to spend my time seeing what's great about a movie or what's positive, because I know every filmmaker lives with that movie for so many years and it means so much to them. To celebrate whatever's in that movie that we can learn from or appreciate, and spend that energy doing that than going out and writing a really bad review about why everything is this movie's so bad and this movie's so bad. It's so more than ever, I really feel like just creating something and putting it out there and completing it, that's a success.
100%. And if you want to see The Room, like I said, tickets are available at the Cinema Arts Center website. I highly recommend it. It's a wildly fun time. It is gut-bustingly funny. You will be in pain from laughing so much. I really want to thank Greg Sestero for coming on the show today. Get his book, The Disaster Artist. It is a great read. It is really, really fun. The movie is really fun too. And check out his movies on Tubi and on his website. I'm sure they're available. Greg, thank you again for coming on the show today. I really appreciate
My
it.
pleasure. Anytime. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely, man.